She dumped me, but I shocked her by kicking her out and reclaiming the ring. I had always thought that relationships had their ups and downs, but with Laura, I was convinced that we were going to weather every storm. We had been together for 4 years, and although we didn't have a perfect relationship, I thought we were in it for the long haul. We were engaged. We had plans, big ones, a wedding, a future. Everything seemed on track. But then, one evening, everything changed. Came completely out of nowhere. No fighting, no warning signs. Just Laura sitting me down, looking me straight in the eyes, and saying, "Ethan, I think we need to break up." At first, I thought it was some kind of joke. I mean, she had been with me for years. We were planning a wedding. Everything was fine, at least I thought it was. But as I looked at her face, I realized she wasn't kidding. She was dead serious. And her reason, my job. Yeah, you read that right, my job. The very thing that had been part of my life for as long as I could remember. I worked at my family's restaurant. The hours were a bit unconventional, sure, late evenings and weekends, but Laura had known that since day one. In fact, she had never seemed bothered by it before. She always knew when I worked, and she was fine with it. But now, suddenly, everything had changed. Apparently, me working late hours wasn't just a minor inconvenience, it was a deal breaker. "I need you to find a new job, Ethan," she said, her voice quiet, almost detached. "We barely see each other anymore. I'm tired of waiting for you to get home late at night." I was stunned. This was the same woman who knew exactly what my schedule was when she agreed to marry me. How could she throw everything away over something we'd both already accepted? I tried to reason with her, explaining that we had always made it work. We had Sunday mornings, some Saturdays, and a few evenings together before my shift. But none of that mattered anymore. She said she needed more time, more attention, more effort. But it wasn't just that. She said she didn't think I cared enough about her needs. And that hit me harder than anything else. I had been working late shifts so we could save money for our wedding, for our future. I thought that would count for something. But to her, it wasn't enough. I had tried to explain how much I cared, how much I wanted our relationship to work. But none of that mattered. All she could see was my job, my hours, the time I couldn't give her. And then, just like that, she dropped the bomb. "Maybe we should just be friends," she said, her voice soft, like she had been rehearsing this in her head for weeks. The room felt like it was spinning. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I was trying to process everything, but all I could feel was the sting of betrayal. We weren't even fighting. We weren't even arguing. She was calmly explaining why our relationship was over. "Are you serious?" I asked, my voice cracking. "You want to throw all of this away because of my job?" Her response cut me to the core. "It's not just your job. It's the fact that you're not willing to change for us." Change? What did she mean by that? I had already changed for her, worked late to save money, supported her in everything she wanted. But none of that was enough. I wasn't the person she wanted me to be. I felt completely blindsided, betrayed in a way I couldn't describe. "You knew my job when you said yes to me," I reminded her. "You knew what this was. Why are you asking me to change now?" She seemed so distant, like she had already checked out emotionally. "I thought things would change over time," she admitted, her eyes avoiding mine. The conversation ended with her deciding she couldn't marry me anymore. She said it wasn't just the job, but everything about us, and how she didn't feel fulfilled. I tried to hold back the anger and confusion that was bubbling inside me, but it was impossible. She had told me for months how much she loved me, how we were going to get married, but now she was telling me that wasn't enough. And I wasn't sure what was worse. The fact that she didn't love me enough to make it work, or the fact that I had been completely blind to how she felt for so long. The next few days were hell. I tried to avoid her as much as possible, spending longer hours at the restaurant. But even when I came home, it was like we were just living in the same space without really living together. She would sit on the couch, watching TV like nothing had changed. She had broken up with me, yet she was still there, acting like we were just roommates. I had given her space, tried to figure out what had gone wrong, but nothing was getting better. I couldn't stand living like this, and that's when I told her she had to leave. The day I asked Laura to leave was one of the hardest decisions I've ever made. I never imagined we'd come to this point. Never thought I'd be standing there, watching her pack her things, knowing that the woman I once planned a future with was walking out of my life. But after everything, I couldn't just sit back and let her continue to dictate the terms of our relationship. I had tried. I had given her everything. I had worked hard, tried to balance my job and our relationship, sacrificed my personal time for the sake of our future. But in the end, it wasn't enough. She wasn't happy, and no matter how much I begged or reasoned with her, I wasn't going to change that. I remember the moment it hit me, the realization that I couldn't make her love me again, couldn't fix whatever it was that was broken between us. She wasn't the person I had fallen in love with anymore, and maybe, just maybe, I wasn't the person she needed me to be either. She didn't care about the things I cared about. She didn't see the sacrifices I had made. And most importantly, she didn't see me for who I was, only for what I wasn't. I had always been the one to compromise. I had always been the one to bend, to sacrifice my own needs for the sake of our relationship. But at that moment, something shifted. I realized I had been losing myself in this relationship, trying to mold myself into what she wanted, into what I thought would make her happy. I had put her on a pedestal, made her my world, while slowly forgetting that I had a life and a future of my own to protect. I wasn't going to keep doing that anymore. I had decided it was time to take control of my life. She had already walked out emotionally. It was time to make it official. I couldn't let her walk all over me anymore, and I wasn't going to beg her to stay. If she didn't want me, then it was time for me to let go. I deserved someone who could see me for who I truly was, someone who could love me, not for what I could give them, but for who I was. When I told her she had to leave, she didn't immediately react the way I thought she would. There was no shouting, no drama, just a long, tense silence. Then she turned to me, her face pale, eyes wide, like she couldn't believe what was happening. "What do you mean you want me to leave?" she asked, her voice shaking. "I mean exactly what I said," I replied, my voice steady, but filled with finality. "I can't do this anymore. I can't keep pretending that everything is fine when it's not. I'm not going to beg you to stay. You've already made your choice, and now I'm making mine." Her face crumpled, and for the first time in weeks, I saw a glimpse of the woman I once loved, the one who cared, the one who had promised to be by my side. But it was too late. The damage had already been done. She wasn't the same person, and neither was I. We had both changed, and that change was irreversible. "I never meant to hurt you," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I thought this was the right thing to do. I thought I needed space to figure things out. I felt a pang in my chest, but I didn't let it show. You had your space, Laura. You had time to think about this. And now I need my own space. I can't keep trying to make this work when it's clear we're not on the same page anymore. I'm done." She stared at me for a moment, as if waiting for me to take it back, for me to cave like I had done so many times before. But I didn't. I had made my decision, and I wasn't going to back down. Not this time. Slowly, she started to pack her things, the sound of zippers and drawers closing filling the room. With a quiet finality. There were no tears, no dramatic pleas. Just silence. The kind of silence that only comes when you know something is truly over. As she gathered her things, I couldn't help but feel a strange mix of emotions. Sadness, anger, relief. I had spent so much of my life holding on to something that wasn't meant to last. I had let her take up space in my heart for so long, and now I was finally kicking her out, not just physically but emotionally. I was reclaiming my life, and it felt like a weight was lifting off my shoulders. When she was done, she stood by the door, holding her bag in one hand, the other resting on the handle. She looked at me one last time, but there were no words left. There didn't need to be. "Goodbye, Ethan," she said, her voice trembling. I didn't say anything. I just nodded, watching as she walked out the door for the last time. As the door clicked shut behind her, I stood there in silence, feeling the emptiness settle around me. But it wasn't the same emptiness I had felt when she first told me she wanted to break up. This one was different. This one was freeing. I wasn't alone anymore. I wasn't holding on to a future that wasn't meant for me. I was free. After Laura left, the silence in the house was deafening. The place that had once been filled with laughter, promises, and dreams for the future now felt like an empty shell. I could almost hear the echo of our time together bouncing off the walls. I'd spent years building a life with her, planning our wedding, our future, and now all of that seemed meaningless. It wasn't just her absence that left me rattled. It was the ring, the engagement ring I had bought with so much love and care, the symbol of everything I had believed we were working towards. I had kept it in the drawer of my nightstand, the small velvet box sitting there quietly, as if mocking me. Every time I walked past it, I was reminded of the broken promises, the hopes and dreams that had been shattered in a moment. I tried to stay busy. I didn't want to think about her or the life we had planned. I buried myself in work, taking on extra shifts. At the restaurant, anything to avoid the hollow feeling that lingered in the pit of my stomach. But no matter how much I worked, no matter how much I tried to occupy my mind with distractions, the ring was always there, like a constant reminder of what I had lost. One night, after another exhausting day at the restaurant, I came home, tired and emotionally drained. I hadn't checked my phone all night, but as I unlocked the front door, I saw a missed call from Laura. My heart skipped a beat. Why was she calling me now? Was she coming back? Was she regretting her decision? I hesitated for a moment before calling her back. I didn't know what I was expecting, but the sound of her voice on the other end made my pulse quicken. "Ethan," she said, her voice soft, almost apologetic. "I've been thinking. I've made a mistake." The words hit me harder than I expected. I could feel the anger and hurt building up inside me, but I kept my voice calm. "What do you want, Laura?" She paused, her words trailing off as if she was unsure of what to say. "I want to fix this. I want to come back. I've been selfish. I know I hurt you, but I was confused. I thought I needed space to figure out what I wanted, but I realize now that it was you. I was just scared." Her words sounded rehearsed, almost too perfect. It was as if she had spent days thinking about what to say to make me want to take her back. But I wasn't falling for it this time. I had spent so many years waiting for her to love me the way I loved her, and I wasn't going to make the same mistake again. "You can't just decide you want me back, Laura," I said, my voice firm. "You can't come back into my life after everything that's happened, after the way you walked out on me. It's not that simple." "I know it's not simple," she said, her voice trembling, "but I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make it right. I miss you, Ethan. I miss us." Her words were like a knife to my chest. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that everything could be fixed, that we could go back to the way things were. But deep down, I knew it wasn't possible. The trust had been broken, and no amount of apologies could fix that. "You left me once, Laura," I said quietly, the weight of the words sinking in. "You walked out of our relationship when things got tough, and now you want to come back like nothing happened? I'm not doing this anymore." There was silence on the other end of the line. For a moment, I thought she was going to cry, but she didn't. Instead, she let out a deep breath, almost resigned. "I understand," she said, her voice barely audible. "I'm sorry, Ethan. I didn't mean to hurt you. I wish things had turned out differently." The finality of her words hit me like a ton of bricks. She wasn't fighting for me anymore. She wasn't trying to convince me that we could make it work. She had given up just like I had. And for the first time since this whole mess began, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. "I'm sorry too," I said, my voice steady. "But this is it. We're done." The line went silent, and I knew there was nothing more to say. I ended the call and sat in the silence of my apartment. My phone buzzed with a message from her minutes later, but I didn't need to read it. I knew what it would say. The usual apologies. The "I miss you" lines. The "I want us to be okay." But none of it mattered anymore. I had finally let go. I walked over to my nightstand, took the velvet box from the drawer, and held the engagement ring in my hand. It was beautiful, a symbol of everything I had once hoped for. But now it was just a reminder of the pain, of the love that had been lost. Without thinking, I opened the door to the balcony and tossed the ring into the night. I watched as it disappeared into the darkness, the sound of it hitting the ground echoing in my mind. It felt like a weight had been lifted from my chest. I wasn't holding on to the past anymore. I was ready to move forward. The days after I threw away the ring felt different, lighter. I didn't realize how much emotional baggage I had been carrying until I let go of that small, meaningless symbol of the future Laura and I had planned. My life had felt frozen, like I was waiting for something to happen, waiting for her to come back, for the pieces to fall back into place. But once the ring was gone, something inside me clicked. It was over, and I was finally ready to let go of the past. I spent the following days in a haze of unexpected freedom, without the constant weight of wondering if she would call, wondering if I was still good enough. I started to breathe again. It wasn't easy at first. The emptiness was palpable. The silence in my apartment felt like it was closing in on me, but it also felt like a new beginning, like I had finally been freed from a relationship that had held me back in so many ways. I took the time to reflect. I realized how much of myself I had sacrificed for Laura. I had put her needs first, her desires, her comfort, while mine had been ignored or shoved aside. I had spent so many years trying to be the man she wanted, but in the process, I had stopped being the man I needed to be. I had let her dictate my life, my choices. Now, with that chapter closed, I finally had the space to figure out who I really was outside of a relationship. I didn't have to compromise anymore. I didn't have to bend over backward to make someone else happy at the expense of my own peace of mind. I could do whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted. And that realization, no matter how lonely it made me feel at times, was liberating. One evening, a week after everything had gone down, I went out with a few friends. Nothing extravagant, just a casual meetup at a local bar to take my mind off things. I hadn't really been social since the breakup, but I realized how much I had missed just being around people who weren't wrapped up in their own drama. I wanted to feel connected again, even if it was just for a night. The bar was packed, the sound of laughter and conversation filling the air. I grabbed a drink and joined my friends at the table. There was a sense of ease I hadn't felt in a long time, and for the first time in what felt like ages, I genuinely smiled. It wasn't long before my eyes fell on someone across the room. She was sitting at the bar with a friend, her laughter infectious, her presence magnetic. I didn't know her, but there was something about the way she carried herself, confident, carefree, and effortlessly beautiful, that caught my attention. My friends were talking, but my gaze kept drifting back to her. She noticed me watching her at one point and smiled, a warm, genuine smile that made my heart skip a beat. It wasn't flirtation, just a friendly acknowledgement. But that small moment was enough to pull me back into the present, to remind me that there was still life beyond the walls of my past. I turned to my friend Ben, who caught me looking. "Go talk to her," he said, nudging me with his elbow. I laughed, a little embarrassed. "I don't know. It's been a while since I've been in the dating game." Ben shrugged. "Doesn't matter. What do you have to lose? You're a catch, man. Go talk to her." I hesitated for a moment, but then I realized he was right. I had spent so long being wrapped up in a toxic relationship, doubting myself, questioning my worth. This was my chance to get back out there, to remind myself that I had more to offer than just being someone's second choice. I wasn't perfect, but I was me, and that was enough. With newfound courage, I walked over to the bar, offering her a smile. She looked up at me, and for a moment, there was that same warmth in her eyes. "Hey," I said, my voice steady. "I couldn't help but notice your smile. Mind if I join you?" She laughed softly, a sound that instantly put me at ease. "Sure, I don't mind." We started talking, and within minutes, it felt like we had known each other for ages. She was funny, smart, and full of energy. We shared stories, laughed about the ridiculous things that had happened in our lives, and even discussed our favorite books. It was easy, it was natural, and it felt like a breath of fresh air. We exchanged numbers before the night ended, and I walked home with a sense of optimism I hadn't felt in a long time. I wasn't looking for anything Serious, not yet. But I had made it through the darkest part of my life, and I was ready to open myself up to the possibility of something new. When I got home, I sat down on the couch, reflecting on everything that had happened in the last week. It hadn't been easy. Breaking up with Laura, letting go of everything I had once believed in, it all felt like a punch to the gut. But in the end, it had been the best thing that ever happened to me. I was finally free, and I wasn't going to let anyone, least of all Laura, take that away from me again. The days after that night at the bar felt different. I was different. It wasn't that I had suddenly become this confident, fearless version of myself, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was in control again. I wasn't waiting for anyone's approval. I wasn't trying to fix something that had been broken beyond repair. I was living my life for me. We went out a few more times after that. Her name was Claire. Smart, easygoing, and had this natural charm that put me at ease. I wasn't rushing anything. For the first time in ages, I wasn't looking for validation from someone else. I was enjoying the company of a woman who appreciated me for who I was, and not for what I could give her. We had genuine conversations, shared laughs, and most importantly, I started to feel like myself again. But despite this new spark, there was still a nagging feeling deep inside me. Laura. I hadn't heard from her since the night I told her to leave. A part of me wanted to hear from her, to know what she was feeling, to understand if she regretted her decision. But another part of me, maybe the part that was learning how to value himself, knew that I didn't need to know. I didn't need her to validate me. I didn't need her to tell me that she was sorry, or that she missed me. I was done. It was around this time that I decided it was time to finalize things. I hadn't touched the apartment we had shared since the breakup. It still smelled like her perfume, still had the remnants of our life together, and I wasn't sure I was ready to face it, but I knew I had to. I walked into the apartment that afternoon, the silence swallowing me whole as I stepped inside. I hadn't been in here for a week, and already it felt different. Empty. I went straight to the bedroom, where our shared life had lived for so long. The closet was still full of her things. Dresses, shoes, the things she had left behind. I started picking up some of the items, the ones that weren't hers anymore. There was the photo album, the stuffed bear she'd gotten for me on our anniversary. I didn't need them. I didn't need reminders of a life that no longer fit. I found the ring that had meant everything to me once. The ring I had picked out with so much care, thinking it would be the symbol of our future together. Now, it was just another piece of jewelry that I had been holding on to for far too long. I stood there, looking at it in my hand, the weight of it heavy in my palm. I thought about the future I had imagined with her. The wedding, the house, the family. It had all been so vivid in my mind. But in that moment, I realized how foolish it had all been. How I had given everything to someone who didn't value it. How I had sacrificed my own happiness, my own sense of self, for a woman who was willing to let go of us without a second thought. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't heartbroken. I just felt free. I had let go of everything that had been holding me back. As I walked to the kitchen and grabbed a small dish, I placed the ring inside it, gently, and walked to the front door. I didn't hesitate. I didn't second-guess myself. I opened the door, took a deep breath, and stepped outside. With a final glance at the apartment, I dropped the ring into the small donation box on the corner of the street. It was over. I was letting go of the past, of the hurt, of the what-ifs. And as I walked away, I felt lighter than I had in a long time. I didn't need the ring. I didn't need her. I didn't need anyone to tell me what my worth was anymore. I knew it. A few days later, I met Claire again, this time for coffee. The conversation flowed easily. We talked about everything, about the future, about what we wanted out of life. There was no pressure. I didn't feel like I had to impress her. I didn't feel like I was competing with my past anymore. It wasn't about replacing Laura. It wasn't about filling a hole. It was about moving forward. About realizing that I didn't need to settle for someone who couldn't appreciate me, couldn't value me. I had learned that the hard way, but I wasn't about to make that mistake again. As Claire and I talked, I realized that I was finally ready for something real. Maybe it would take time, but I was ready to open up again, to trust again. I wasn't looking for someone to complete me. I was whole on my own. But I was open to the idea that maybe, just maybe, I could find someone who would complement my life. Someone who would see me for who I really was, not the man they hoped I would be. When I got home later that night, I stood in front of the mirror, looking at the man I had become. I had been through a lot, but I wasn't broken. I wasn't lost. I was better, stronger. I had fought for my happiness, for my peace of mind, and I wasn't going to let anyone take that away from me again. Looking back, I've learned that sometimes the most painful experiences are the ones that lead to the greatest personal growth. I spent so long trying to make someone else's happiness my priority, only to lose sight of my own. Laura's departure forced me to face the truth that I had been living in the shadows of someone else's expectations. I realized I didn't need anyone's approval to be happy. I am worthy of love, respect, and a future that reflects who I am, not who someone else wants me to be. The most important lesson? The strength to let go is where true freedom begins.